Hi everybody, it's Leah and Matt from FlytrapStore.
Hey guys.
Hi, we are back with a video for you on potting, which is very useful, I think, for everyone. Now Matt's going to do a fly trap today, and we're going to unpot first, show you the unpotting process, and then he's going to pot them back up and show you how to do that.
Yeah, so we have a video Leah did potting in sphagnum, which is a different process, and I wanted to show potting in our peat mix here. So I've got a mix of sphagnum peat moss, silica sand, and perlite. And so once we moved to Missouri, we got different sources of stuff. And this sand, I actually like it quite a bit better. It's a little bit bigger grain. They call it gravel, but it's just kind of large grains of sand, and it works really well. It's nice and heavy. It keeps the pots weighted down, and it breaks it up and gives some aeration. And I'm looking for my scooper, but I don't see it. So
It's right here.
Grab a handful of this.
It's right here.
This is the perlite here too that we ended up getting. So it's
smaller.
It's smaller and it's more uniform. They call it medium perlite. The stuff most people use is called coarse perlite. So I really like how uniform this is, especially for the fly traps. Especially when you're potting little ones, it makes it nice and flat on the surface of the soil. The pitcher plants don't seem to care either way, but the fly traps, it makes it nice and even on the surface. So
now, what if you can't get those special things though? What should you use?
It is hard sometimes to locate perlite or sand. A lot of people just use 50-50 perlite and peat, which is you can get sourced most places. We do sell most of these ingredients on this. We sell a soil mix. I should put in a perlite entry for the product, and we do sell peat too. But we do have the soil mix ready. This is what we ship, basically.
Yeah. If you really had to, you could use just peat, right?
You can use pure peat. Fly traps tend to not do quite as well. The pitcher plants, a lot of really good growers, pitcher plants use pure peat. But, for fly traps, it's better to have something breaking it up, either sand, perlite, or both.
Okay,
and make sure it should be inert ingredients. So you don't want to use like beach sand or play sand or horticultural sand, because it can be a different type of mineral that'll leach into the soil. Silica sand doesn't dissolve in water, so it's 100% inert. And the stuff we're using is 99.9% pure silica, so it doesn't add anything to the soil other than aeration.
Because fly traps do not like minerals.
And
some minerals.
Right.
And then what about the peat? We want to make sure it's not fertilized. No Miracle Grow peat or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
No fertilizer in the peat moss. So just pure peat.
All right.
And that's pretty easy to find most places, but a lot of people can only find Miracle Grow, and that doesn't work for fly traps.
No.
So I have a pot of G16 here that are a little overcrowded. And they've kind of outgrown the pot. You can see the roots coming out the bottom here.
Oh boy.
Two little white caps, I mean the root tips are through the pot. So G16, and I'm going to repot this, and I'll probably uppot them because these look like they'll be pretty big. So I'll switch from this small, I think these are like 3.5 inches deep and 2.5 or 3 across, to these 4.5 inch deep pots. So here we go, uprooting.
What are you doing? You're loosening it
I'm just squeezing the sides of the pot gently without trying to crack the pot, so that it loosens the soil up.
Okay.
And when you repot, you'll typically trip all the traps, so don't worry about that. But so here's the pot, the soil in it. You can see the sand, and that was our old silica sand, the smaller part. And these are the roots down here, all the little white roots. So ideally you don't break those. So you just want to gently squeeze the soil and shake it. And peat moss is easy to get off. The long fiber sphagnum can be a real pain, and you can usually tear the roots. But peat moss, you can either just dunk it in water and it'll come right off, or just pull them apart. And then I usually leave some of the soil on the roots.
What are you doing right there?
So I'm cleaning off the back. So the fly traps kind of grow in one direction, and they'll tend to divide on the back side. So you can see this one has a small division. I don't think it's ready to pull off yet, but you can see the smaller plant on this side here and on the larger plant. So I'm just cleaning off anything that's dead. So anything that's black or brown on the rhizome, I usually keep a spray bottle handy, moisten the rhizome so I can see what's going on, and try to pull off any of the leaves.
Sometimes that rhizome gets kind of slimy too, and it's nice to clean it off with the bottle. Yeah,
whenever you uproot them, just make sure you got anything on there cleaned off. So just to make the video a little shorter, I'll just repot this one real quick.
Okay.
So now we have one cleaned up.
Okay.
You can see the roots You can see a couple white caps. These are the nice active growing roots.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them really healthy looking roots.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that whenever you keep them not too wet. If you keep them too wet, they typically won't grow very much roots, and then they don't get as big. So we try to keep them moderately moist all the time. Never let them dry out, but don't keep them soaking wet all the time either. Otherwise, they just won't reach their full potential.
And possibly will rot, especially if they're not getting sunshine.
So this pot has holes in the bottom, and typically what I do is I put either a paper towel in the bottom or some long fiber sphagnum to block the holes.
Why?
Because sometimes when you pour water into the trays, as it passes under the pots, it'll suck out some of the soil and sand, and then you'll end up with an empty spot at the bottom of the pot that won't take up water.
Okay.
So you either put something, some people use screens. I usually just grab some spent paper towels and shove it in the bottom. So I'll just shove this down in the bottom, tear it in half. It's a lot of paper towel.
That's what was at the bottom of that fly trap when he unpotted it too. You guys might have noticed it. There was some white stuff on the bottom. That was a paper towel.
So paper towel on the bottom, just cover up all the holes.
Yep.
Make sure that they're covered.
Okay.
And then start filling the pot.
Okay.
And I pack it fairly loosely. I try to get it kind of packed in the bottom.
Yeah.
So I drop it in. I drop one handful in usually, push down to the bottom, make sure it's packed in all 4 corners, so it's kind of tight, and then loosely pack as I go up. And it's hard to describe the compactness. You don't want it mashed down in there, but you don't want it too loose either, because it won't take up the water very well. So I don't know what I'd say, maybe 5 or 10 pounds of pressure with my hand, maybe not even that much, maybe 2 to 5 pounds of pressure I push.
Yeah.
And just make it so that it feels, you can squeeze the sides of the pot and it doesn't feel like a brick. It's just kind of nice and soft, but not so gentle soft that you can't feel any resistance.
Now, why are you doing those different levels of packing in the first place?
Well, you pack it denser in the bottom so it keeps the water down there.
Okay.
And then the roots will grow down to try to get into that. It also helps with water uptake. The denser it is in the bottom, the more it takes up the water at the bottom. Okay. And then it'll wick it all the way up to the top of the pot. So,
and then it's looser on the top because?
Just so that it gives a chance for the roots to grow down more easily.
Okay.
And it makes the soil airier. The looser it is, the more air there is in the soil, and that helps with root growth and just general health of the plant.
Yeah, rhizome growth as well.
So I typically use a large screwdriver or a chopstick to make a hole. And then, so I just got a perfectly hole. Fly traps are easy. You just kind of make a pretty good size hole, depending on the size of the plant. This one's a pretty good size, young to young adult G16, so it's not huge, but it's got a nice healthy rhizome on it.
It does.
And so just make it big enough that you can gently get the roots down in there. And I guide them in with the screwdriver, not jamming them, but just gently using it as a guide. And then I work the soil in a little bit underneath the leaves. And then I use my fancy turkey baster. This is collected rainwater here, so make sure you don't use tap water with fly traps. But collected rainwater, distilled water, RO water is fine. And then I use that to baste the soil, which helps it settle in around the rhizome. And then usually I'll give it a little squeeze and a shake, and that helps pack it down a little bit. And then I'll come back and clean it off a little bit with the turkey baster. And then once that settles, I might try to just clean it up the rest of the way. And sometimes you'll have to come back and lift traps, and I usually have something close by to do that with, just to try to keep everything getting maximum sunlight on it. And this leaf here, I could probably remove it. You can see it's on its way out. That's a leaf. It's one of the oldest leaves left on the rhizome, the black and yellowing you can see on it. I usually let them go all the way till they're completely dry, and they just come off with a gentle tug. So a lot of times the fly trap will reabsorb nutrients from the leaf as that leaf dries up and dies. So I usually just leave them. So
okay, what if you don't have a turkey baster though?
Like buy one.
But I mean, can't you just spray it with water?
You can just spray it with water or drizzle it with whatever you have on hand to do it with. But
okay,
I like it because it helps settle the soil in around. You can work your fingers underneath it, but then you end up damaging traps and whatnot. So I kind of like the turkey baster for letting the water flow over it and settle the soil in against it.
So it moves the soil in against the rhizome in a gentle way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks good. Look at that.
And then usually,
happy plant.
what I'll do is I'll keep a big bowl on hand. I just repotted this Sarracenia, and
Oh.
I'm pulling it out of here. So
That's
some
a
live
big one.
sphagnum on top.
Yeah.
Big pot of Sarracenia, and I'm putting this guy down in here, and then I'll let it saturate the soil as much as it wants to, sucking up all the rainwater. And so the plant, it's better to keep them a little wet after repotting. So I'll just let that soak up as much water as it can, and then stick it in a tray and let it settle back in, and it'll be ready for sale in spring.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. So you
You're
got
welcome.
some
Happy
happy
fly trapping,
traps.
guys.
Happy fly trapping.